For Afghani refugee Ali, the decision to settle in the rural town of Griffith, where he now has his own business, was an easy one.
We are very friendly. Yeah. And also we can find easy job as well, and because the population not too much.
Australia's government hopes that more new arrivals will take the same path to less populated towns under new changes to permanent migration. That includes cutting the country's annual migrant intake by about 30,000 people and providing incentives for some new arrivals and international students who choose rural areas over Australia's major cities. According to the federal government, about 112,000 skilled migrants arrived in the country last financial year. Out of that number, it says more than 8 out of every 10 people settled here in Sydney or in Melbourne. The government argues that its major cities are struggling under rapid population growth, impacting everything from public transportation to housing.
There's no doubt that we have got substantial congestion. Anyone who lives in Sydney realises that, or Melbourne.
University of Technology Sydney professor Jock Collins studies immigration and its impacts.
The problem is that the large immigration program, in fact over now 7 decades, hasn't been met by the required public infrastructure investment.
And there are concerns that the new measures won't have much impact. The new cap on permanent migration is only 2,000 less than the number of permanent migrants who arrived here last year. And there doesn't appear to be any policies in place to ensure that people who initially move into rural centres remain there. Much of Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison's election campaign recently has focused on being tough on border security and stopping boats filled with people seeking asylum in Australia illegally. University of Sydney political science lecturer Stuart Jackson says the attacks on 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand earlier this month, which claimed 50 lives, has forced Australia's government to change its election focus.
Post-Christchurch becomes not possible to talk about holding those people away. Somehow they are, brown people who shouldn't be brought here, or words to those effect. You have this situation of, well, we can't talk about it in the context of white supremacy. We might be seen as being racist, or very specifically racist. So we'll talk about migration then, and we'll talk about who comes to the country and what do we need here. It's
a big issue, and I think particularly at the moment with the Trump populism and so forth, that people have been playing this immigration card for political reasons, and Australia is no exception to that.
The new changes are set to take effect in July. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.